Good morning, boys and girls. Today's math lesson is we're still working on telling time, but today we're going to talk about telling time using AM and PM. I don't want to explain what AM and PM mean because that comes from a different language, but AM, when we hear a time and we say AM, that usually means in the morning, okay? But the best way to say it, or the correct way to say AM, or to think about AM, is those are the hours of the day from midnight to noon, and noon is the afternoon. So once again, AM, when you think about time in the AM, those are the hours in the day from midnight until noon. Now, you know, midnight, it's dark. We're asleep at midnight. And noon, it's already daytime. So again, when you think about AM, I want you to remember this phrase. Those are the hours from midnight to noon. We call that AM. So sometimes when you're sleeping, okay, it might be AM. Sometimes when you wake up to eat breakfast, it might be in the AM. So let's look at our clock here. So I was thinking about school. Now, normally when we were in school and we get up and we go to school, the bell rings and we're supposed to be in our seat at 8 o'clock. So that time says, if you look at the time, if you look at the clock, the hour hand is pointing to the 8 and the minute hand is pointing to the 12. And it's actually pointing to the 60, but we don't say 60 minutes. We just read it this way, 8 o'clock. So if we go to school, I'm going to write school. And we read a clock, and it says, we know how to write the time from our other lessons. So we say 8 o'clock. Well, we have to figure out, is that AM or is that PM? Okay. Now, PM those are the hours in the day from noon, which is the afternoon, to midnight. Now, the afternoon is around 12 o'clock. Okay. So now let's think again. If we start school at 8 o'clock, is it 8 a.m. or is it 8 p.m.? Well, let's think about that for a minute. The hours from midnight, which is when we're sleeping, to about noon, that's the middle of the day. So when we wake up and we go to school and we start at 8, what time do you think it is? Do you think it's 8 a.m. or do you think it's 8 p.m.? Now remember, p.m. is the hours from noon, which is like the middle of the day, lunchtime, to midnight when we're sleeping. So are we in school at that time? Do we start school at that time? No. So I think we should say school is at 8 a.m. Okay? Because when we begin school at 8 o'clock a.m., those are the hours from midnight until noon. Okay? Now, let's try a different time. So let's say it's 8 again, but we're not at school anymore. School's over, we had dinner, and we're getting ready to go to bed. And maybe your mom or your dad or your tío or your tía, whoever you live with, decides they want to read a story to you. So let's say we're going to read a bedtime story. And it's 8 o'clock again. The clock says 8 o'clock. So here's our 8 o'clock, no minutes. Well, we have to decide, is that 8 a.m. when it's time for a bedtime story, or is it p.m.? Okay, so remember, p.m. is the hours in the day from noon, the afternoon, till we go home, all the way up till midnight when we're asleep. So do you think this label here should be 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.? You're right, it should be p.m. Okay? Now, another way to think about AM and PM is this. AM is usually when we do stuff in the daytime, when there's daylight. PM is when we do things in the evening when it gets darker. But sometimes it's dark in the AM, and usually that's when we're asleep. Okay? And sometimes when it's PM, there's light outside, like noon when we eat lunch. If we eat lunch and it's 12 o'clock, it's noon and it's still light outside, but it's PM. So you have to remember these phrases here. The hours from midnight to noon is our AM hours, and the hours from noon to midnight are the PM hours. Now let's practice another one, okay? So let's say we go to, I don't know, let's say we have an art class and we're at school, and let's take a guess here. Let's change our time. So I want to make my time this time. Okay. So what time does that say? You're right. It's 10 o'clock. Now, we want to know, we need to figure out, is that AM or PM? Well, we don't know yet because we need more information. So let's pretend we're in school and we're going to go to the NPR first thing in the morning and watch Miss Branstetter talk to us. So we're going to go to the NPR, go to NPR. Okay? Maybe Miss Branstetter wants to speak to all the second graders. So now let's think. Do you think that is 10 a.m. or do you think it's 10 p.m.? So let's think about it. AM is the hours from midnight until noon. Now, are we in school at 10 a.m.? Okay. Or are we at school at 10 p.m.? Now, the hours from noon until midnight. And here's another thing to remember. PM is usually when it's dark, so I'm going to do my best to draw a little moon here. AM is usually when it's sunny, when there's daylight. This is my sun. Okay. Now, if we're going to go to the NPR to listen to Miss Branstetter, are we going to go at 10 p.m. when it's dark? So guess, what time is it? It's, what should we put here, I mean? Okay. We should put 10 a.m. because we're kind of going in the morning. Alrighty, let's try another one. Okay, so let's pretend, and we're going to put a new time now. Let's pretend that it's this time. Let's go backwards. Okay, so here's 8 o'clock, and I think I want to make it 8:30. So the time is 8. Remember, when we read the hour hand, we look at the 9 and the 8, and we always read the smaller number. So the smaller number is 8. So the time is 8. And then we read the minute hand, and the minute hand is pointing to the 30. So it's 8:30. Okay. Now we need to figure out what our label's going to be. Is it going to be AM or PM? But we need more information. So let's say it's 8:30, but we are going to go to bed. Time to go to sleep. So let's think, boys and girls. Should we label this time AM or PM? Now remember, AM is the hours from midnight to noon, and that's usually when it's sunny outside. Okay, we do a lot of stuff in the AM when there's sunshine. Okay, the PM is when it's dark outside, and those are the hours from noon to midnight. So, what should go here? AM or PM? Bedtime. Is it sunny or is it dark? That's right, it should be PM. Alrighty. Now, I'm going to try to trick you. So I'm going to change my time. Let me change my label. And I'm going to change my time. And this time, I want you to be real. I want you to think. Okay? Let's say we're going to play after school. we want to go play somewhere after school. Maybe we're going to go to a friend's house and we're going to play or watch a movie or do something fun after school. Okay, and here's the time. Let's change our time. I'm going to change it to 4 o'clock because school ends at 2:30. And then what if you go to after school care and your mom or dad pick you up and then they're going to take you to your friend's house at 4 o'clock. Okay, now, it might be sunny outside. So, oh, we forgot to write our time. So the time is 4 o'clock. Alrighty, there's our time. We want to figure out if we're going to go play after school, is that 4 a.m. or is that 4 p.m.? So now we need to think, well, the hours from midnight to noon, that's a.m., midnight to noon. But what if you don't know what midnight is? Okay, midnight, okay, is, let me draw a little arrow here. Midnight is when we have 12 a.m., which is when we're sleeping. Okay? Okay? That is midnight, 12 a.m. Noon is different. Noon is 12 o'clock too. Let me draw a little arrow here. Noon is 12, but it's p.m. p.m. That's noon. Okay? So this one's kind of tricky. If we're going to play after school, okay, that means clock already passed 12, okay, noon. It passed 12 noon. Oops, I wrote this wrong. Let me fix that. It already passed noon, because the middle of the day we call that noon, and the middle of the day is 12 p.m. So if it passed 12 p.m. and it went to 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., then when we go play after school, it's not 4 a.m. because 4 a.m. we would be sleeping. It's 4 p.m. Okay. So this a.m. and p.m. is kind of tricky, boys and girls. Just remember a few things. A.m., it's usually daylight. P.M. is usually when it starts to get, it's the middle of the day, and then it starts to get darker and darker, and then it's pretty dark, okay? The other thing you need to remember about A.M. is that those are the hours of the day from midnight to noon. And just so you remember, midnight is 12 a.m. That's the middle of the night. We're all asleep at that time. Okay. PM, those are the hours in the day from noon, which is in the afternoon, okay, to midnight. Okay. So it's kind of tricky. Now, usually after we eat lunch, it changes to noon. It changes to PM. In the morning, when we do things in the morning, when you wake up and you brush your teeth, it's AM. When you are walking to school or driving to school, that's the AM. When we do our blending and dictation, that's AM. But the minute we start to get to lunchtime and we have to go outside and it gets past noon, 12 p.m., then it changes to PM. That's when the day starts to change and the sun moves and we start to get darker, okay? So, if we eat breakfast, that's AM. If we eat dinner, we eat dinner in PM. If you go to soccer practice after school, that's usually PM because it's afternoon, okay? Always remember, afternoon, and noon is 12 p.m. So anything after noon is always going to be PM. And then when the time changes to midnight when we're sleeping, it's 12 a.m. and that's in the morning. And sometimes it's dark. When I get up very early at 3 a.m., it's 3 a.m., but it's still dark outside. Okay? But it's already past noon and it's past 12 a.m. Okay? Now, how can you remember? I have a question for you and I want you to think about this. How can you remember if the time is a.m. or if the time is p.m.? That's a really good question. It's kind of a hard one. Okay? So just remember this. It's a.m. A.m. is the hours from midnight to noon. And midnight is 12 a.m. Okay? Noon is 12 p.m. Okay? Now, how do you know when it's p.m.? Well, p.m. are the hours from noon to midnight. Okay? So if you play after school, that's past noon. That means the time will be p.m. Alrighty? So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little homework to practice with, and I want you to do your best. And if you have questions, maybe we'll have a meeting during the week to help clarify if you're a little bit confused. Okay, boys and girls, have a good day.